The night was silent except for the faint ticking of the old wall clock and the soft sobs of a woman who had spent her last ounce of strength holding her world together. Maria sat on the cold hospital bench, her fingers trembling as she held the worn leather strap of her handbag. Her eyes, red from tears, fixed on the flickering fluorescent light above her. The doctor's words still echoed in her head, "We've done all we can. He's stable, but his chances depend on the next few days." Those words had felt like both mercy and cruelty at once. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small good deeds, then take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel, Light of Kindness. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts around the world. Maria's husband, Daniel, had been in a car accident a week ago. A delivery truck had run a red light, leaving him with multiple fractures and severe head trauma. The man who had once been her pillar, gentle, hardworking, always smiling, now lay motionless, surrounded by beeping machines. The hospital bills were piling up, her savings nearly gone, and her faith stretched thin. Yet even in her despair, Maria still brought a cup of tea to the nurse at midnight, still whispered thank you to the janitor who mopped the floor, still smiled at the little boy who visited his sick mother in the next room. She was invisible to most, but her quiet acts were ripples spreading through the hallways of that hospital. One evening, as Maria sat reading an old book beside her husband's bed, a young nurse named Lila came in, her eyes tired from a double shift. She noticed the small paper notes Maria had placed on the bedside table, tiny messages like, "You are loved, hope lives here," and "One more day." Lila had lost her father years ago, and seeing those notes stirred something deep in her. That night, she went home and wrote her own message to a lonely elderly patient she cared for. "You're not forgotten." That patient smiled for the first time in weeks. Maria never knew it, but her kindness was beginning to change lives. Each morning, she arrived early to help the ward staff adjust patients' pillows or fetch water for those who couldn't move. Some nurses gently told her she didn't have to do that, she wasn't employed there, but Maria just smiled softly and said, "Sometimes, doing something helps me breathe." Days turned into weeks. Daniel's condition stayed uncertain. There were moments when the doctors suggested preparing for the worst, but Maria refused to let despair take the final word. One night, after everyone had gone home, she leaned close to her husband's ear and whispered, "If love can heal, you'll come back to me." Her tears fell on his hand, and though it didn't move, she thought she saw a faint twitch, or maybe it was hope playing tricks on her heart. Outside, winter had begun. The hospital corridors were colder, quieter, lonelier. Many patients had no visitors at all. Maria started bringing small baked goods, muffins, bread, and cookies, and leaving them anonymously at the nurse's station. Soon, others followed her example. The once sterile ward began to feel like a place where care lived, not just medicine. Then one day, a man in his 50s entered the hospital carrying a small donation box. His name was Haroon, a businessman who had lost his wife years ago and had since dedicated his time to helping others. He had heard about the angel lady in the hospital who, despite her pain, spread kindness to everyone. He wanted to meet her. When he found Maria sitting by her husband's side, he introduced himself quietly. She looked surprised. "I'm no angel," she said softly, "just a woman who doesn't know what else to do." Haroon smiled and replied, "That's what makes you one." He offered to cover part of her husband's medical expenses. Maria was overwhelmed and tried to refuse, but he insisted. "Sometimes," he said, "kindness needs to be received as much as it's given." For the first time in months, Maria cried out of relief, not despair. Weeks later, Daniel's condition began to improve. Slowly, he started responding to sound, then to touch, then, one miraculous morning, he opened his eyes. Maria's heart almost stopped. The doctors were amazed. "It's a long road," they said, "but he's coming back." News of his recovery spread through the hospital. The nurses, patients, and even the janitors who had come to know Maria's story felt as though hope itself had taken a breath. Lila, the young nurse, started volunteering at an orphanage on her days off. The old patient she had comforted began drawing again. And Haroon, inspired by Maria's spirit, founded a small local charity called the Quiet Strength Foundation, its mission, to help families facing medical crises without support. But the story wasn't about miracles alone. It was about the power of small, steady kindness, the kind that expects nothing, demands nothing, yet changes everything. Months passed, and Daniel, though still fragile, could now walk short distances. On the day he was discharged, the entire ward came to say goodbye. The head nurse handed Maria a small note signed by everyone, "Thank you for reminding us why we chose this work." Maria stood in the sunlight outside the hospital doors, holding her husband's hand. For the first time, she noticed the cherry tree blooming near the parking lot. She had passed it 100 times before but never really seen it. She smiled. "It's strange," she whispered to Daniel, "how you only notice beauty after pain teaches you where to look." He nodded weakly, eyes moist. "You kept me alive," he said. "No," she replied, her voice trembling. "Kindness did." The following months were quiet but full of meaning. Maria began volunteering full-time with Haroon's foundation. They helped families who couldn't afford treatment, mothers who slept on hospital benches like she once had, and children who needed hope more than medicine. Each time Maria walked into a hospital now, she carried a basket of muffins and a heart full of peace. Years later, when people asked Haroon how his foundation began, he would smile and say, "It started with one woman who thought kindness was just something small, and proved it could move mountains." The story of Maria and Daniel became known in their town, not because it was extraordinary, but because it was real. People who heard it began to look at kindness differently, not as weakness, but as strength. The quiet kind. The enduring kind. One evening, as Maria sat in her garden watching the sunset, her husband resting beside her, she recalled the long nights in that hospital. "Funny," she murmured, "how pain was once the only thing I felt. Now, it's gratitude that fills the space it left behind." Daniel smiled, the fading light painting his face gold. "You gave that to everyone, love, not just me." And in that simple sentence lived the truth of her life, that every act of compassion, no matter how small, carries a force unseen, one that can heal not just one soul, but many. So if this story touched your heart today, if you believe that kindness, no matter how quiet, has the strength to change lives, then please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Light of Kindness. Help us spread the message that compassion still lives in this world. Before you leave, I'd love for you to comment below and tell us, what's the kindest act someone has ever done for you, or that you've done for another? Your words might inspire someone who needs hope today. As poet Rumi once wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." And as Mark Twain said, "Kindness is a language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see." Because in the end, it's not the loudest voices or the biggest gestures that change the world, it's the quiet strength of kindness that lives in the hearts of those who refuse to stop caring.